Welcome back to another edition of Inside Colerain Cardinals Athletics here on wearecolerain.com and ESP Media powered by Sidearm Sports. My name is Jason Grayford. Today we are joined by Colerain assistant AD Mike Wiesman. Mike, good to have you back on the program. We'll get right into it here in just a moment, but first want to let fans know that we've seen that both golf teams as well as girls tennis has finished up their season in the sectional play. We're going to save a discussion about those teams for our season finale episode 2 weeks from now. So we'll hold off on them and get a kind of a full recap of both golf teams and the tennis team's seasons a couple of weeks in our season finale. So let's move on from there. And Mike, we'll first start off here today's episode with your cross country teams and the fact that they'll be at the GMC Championships coming up this weekend at Voice of America Park. We also see that the districts are going to be at Voice of America on the 23rd. So back-to-back weekends running at the same place. So I'm curious from that point, for this weekend with the GMCs, what are the coaches hoping to get out of the runners and also hoping to learn about the course that can help them, especially in the districts, to advance possibly out of that onto a regional?
Yeah, absolutely. So they've had some really difficult races the last couple of weeks. They were up at Centerville 2 weeks ago. They were at Ross last week. So a lot of really good times are coming in for them. They're hitting a lot of PRs at this point in time. And each week they continue to lower their times. So the coaching staff is really encouraged with that. The boys seem to have placed a little higher at the Ross Invitational. So, looking forward to this weekend in the GMCs. Obviously, if you get to run the same course twice, you get to learn a little bit about how they may run in one and then the next week. And so, obviously it's an advantage for us in the GMC schools to be able to run in the same location twice. So, coaching staff's looking forward to that, and, maybe make some tweaks in how they go about approaching the race. So looking forward to see how they do this weekend.
Given the fact that they have been busy as of late, as you said, Centerville and Ross and the competition they faced, do they feel like that level of competition they've seen is going to benefit them when we get to the GMCs and when we get to the districts, knowing that the bar's been pretty high the last couple of weeks heading into the postseason?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, my coaching experience is, you always want to play the best because truly what matters is when you get to that tournament time. When you get to the end of the season, how far you progress is based on how much you challenge yourself throughout the year. And if you know what's coming and you know how to compete against those teams, it only further benefits you when you get to that tournament time. So, those big competitions, those big tournaments are always great to build the confidence and kind of calming some of the nerves when you get there in those big races to know, hey, we've been here, we've done this, we've raced against these teams. So I think the coach staff's done a really good job of setting them up for some success.
We'll keep an eye on how they perform in the ECCs as well as the districts, and we'll talk about that in our next show in a couple of weeks. Let's move on to the pitch, and let's talk about girls soccer first. We're heading into the home stretch of the regular season for both soccer programs. We now know the postseason draw for both soccer programs, and we'll talk about the girls here first. They've earned the number 21 seed in the sectional. They'll take on Kings out of the ECC in the first round on the 18th. They're the 22 seed. So if you take care of business there against a lower seed, your reward is Loveland, and they are a team that has all the belief and all the confidence that they can make a deep run and perhaps even go win a state championship. Obviously, somebody in Mount Notre Dame may have something to say about that for sure. But nevertheless, coming into this last week of the season, your team's 0-4-1 in its last 5, and with Ursuline and Mason to close out the regular season, which is not easy. I'm wondering how important they're looking at these last 2 games of the regular season to at least to get ourselves back going in better form heading into the postseason so that we can at least try and get through round 1 against Kings and maybe eventually on to Loveland.
Well, I think those 2 tests this last week maybe allow you to tinker with your formation because you're probably going to play a very similar type of game plan against those, a Loveland, maybe not so much against Kings. You might be a little bit more aggressive in how you go about that game plan. But, obviously if you make it past Kings and you have Loveland, you're going to, probably play a little bit more of a defensive minded game, maybe a counter game. So, to get that practice against a Mason, this week, so these training sessions this week are valuable to, what are you looking for? How are we going to approach these games? Knowing that you're going to have to defend a lot But, as long as they buy into that and, maybe catch a couple counters and catch them off guard, I've been in plenty of those games where you're in it and you really shouldn't be in it. But because, the girls believe that that's the game plan that's going to work and they execute it, crazy things can happen. That's why they're high school kids. So, I think this week is really good for them, having that back end, difficult schedule to then maybe lead right into, the tournament and hopefully avoid the injuries and be healthy and strong for that tournament run.
As you said, you've been through the grind of a season on the pitch, coaching in days gone by. I'm wondering how that is for coaching staff, to your point of late in the season, maybe tinkering with some formation changes, maybe going to more of a defensive strategy. I've seen some teams play a 5-4-1 against the Loveland type of program. What's that process like for a coach this late in the season to be tinkering with formation changes and maybe going to just a more of a defensive style and try to attack via the counter?
Well, I mean, you have to do it in training sessions, but more than anything, you have the girls to believe that you're giving them the best chance to win. So, obviously, you can't attack and possess the ball maybe like some of these other teams. So just understand that this is what we are. We're going to have to grind it out. We're going to have to play really physical and tough, and we're going to have to win 50-50 balls. You win 50-50 balls, you give yourself a chance. You defend really well. You always give yourself a chance to win. So, these training sessions are really important about of driving those points of emphasis home, and hopefully that they can go out and execute when it counts.
Over on the boys' side, they're closing out the regular season. Well, they're going to get Turpin and Mason to close the regular season. They also know their draw, as I mentioned before, in the sectional opener. They're going to get Middletown in the sectional opener. So a familiar opponent in round one. That'll happen on the 19th. You've already beaten them once early in the season, so you maybe can draw a little bit from that. And I'll get your thoughts on that here in just a second. But on the boys' side, they also have another very, very difficult ECC team waiting in the second round, and that's Anderson. They are 14-0-1 on the campaign. So obviously we're not going to look past Middletown on the 19th. The coaches won't let that happen. And I'm wondering, given the fact that we're so familiar with Middletown, how much of a benefit that can be, that the personnel, their formations, their tactics ahead of time, and how much can be taken from that first matchup that you played Middletown about a month ago?
Well, I think you obviously want to focus on what you did well in that match, and then maybe they did give up a goal. I think they won 2-1 against Middletown in the regular season. So, Middletown, they play very, very hard. They're disciplined. So taken from that, they've got a kid up top that's really fast. That's what kind of broke them down last time. I was at the game when they played Middletown last time. So, just shorten up that defensive line and their responsibilities. I think they'll be fine against Middletown. They've also played Anderson this year, lost 3-1 to them. Had a couple injuries in that game, and they got a couple goals scored against some of our substitutes. So, I think the coach staff is really happy with the draw right now. And once you get into those rounds, you're going to have to play somebody good. So you just have to play your game and hopefully you get a couple bounces that go your way. And I think this team is extremely talented. There's a lot of carryover from our team last year that made it to the district semis. So obviously when you got an Alex McAfee that can score from anywhere, is always a great threat. And you've got Will Shuddy in the back. You can make some of the most unbelievable saves I've ever seen. You give yourself a chance to win at any point in time.
How important is it to have that experience back from a team a year ago, as you said, made it to the district semifinals, going into a season like this, where, as you said, you're going to end up playing somebody really, really good in the tournament, particularly early as round two? How big is that, knowing that you have a bunch of guys who know what it takes at that juncture?
Experience is everything. That's why, last year we were very successful with a lot of those guys. Some of the guys playing now have played in these tournament games 3-4 times now. So to build off of that, we played a lot of young guys early the last couple of years. So that experience is paramount. When those lights come on in the tournament time, you don't get tomorrow. So you got to kind of find that level of expectation, that level of what it's going to take, but also kind of keeping those nerves in check so that you don't play nervous, or you don't play, not to make a mistake, and go out there and execute the game plan.
One last thing about the boys before we move on to our next bit here on the program. A bit of a tough stretch the last couple of weeks, last week in September, first week in October, going 0-3-1 in a stretch, losing to LaSalle, Lakota West, and Lakota East, and tying Harrison. But then we get a big breakthrough most recently last Thursday in an 8-1 win against Hamilton. And I'm wondering how important that was for the team's confidence heading into the end of the regular season. The old adage goes, we always want to peak at the end of the regular season. And we were hitting a bit of a rough patch there. Did that win come at a good time for the team to help get their minds reset ahead of the last week of the regular season, and especially before they get Middletown in the sectional opener?
Absolutely. It's all about watch. It's a lot more fun when you see the ball go in the back of the net, kind of builds that confidence. They've been struggling to put the ball away here the last couple of weeks, but West is a great team. East is a great team. LaSalle's a good team, and nothing against Harrison, they're all good teams. So, and my favorite line is they're high school boys. That's what they do. I mean, they show up some days, they don't show up other days. Some days they look like they're world beaters, and the next you go, did you play soccer yesterday? So it's all about keeping that consistency, keeping the right frame of mind, and just understanding not, just kind of ride the wave, not too high, not too low, just kind of keep that even keel, and they'll go out and perform. They know what it takes, and I have confidence that this week's going to be a good week going forward and head into the tournament.
Helps that you get hat tricks from Alex McAfee and Tavion Hutcherson, does it not?
Yeah, that's Tavion. Tavion's been kind of working back from, he was sick a couple weeks ago, so kind of getting his legs back and his endurance back up. So he's going to be a vital part. Helping Alex put a couple away here in the tournament. Crazy things happen in the tournament. You only need one. So if you can defend well enough, it only takes one. So we'll see.
We'll move indoors now and talk about your volleyball program. And boy, what a strong year they have had overall. 12-5 overall. They've won 4 straight coming in to this week, where they're going to close out the regular season with 2 GMC matchups against Mason and Lakota East. They're 5-2 in the GMC at this point. So you can get all the way to 7-2 if you're able, just no big deal, beat Mason, this week, especially given what they've done in the ECC at this point. They're unbeaten in the ECC at 8-0. Lakota East, probably a more favorable matchup for you. But nevertheless, great season for this team all the way around. Best season they've had in several years. And we know their postseason road. They're going to be a 15 seed in the opening round. They're going to take on Anderson, who is a 17 seed. They're on the 19th, and possibly Edgewood in round 2. They're a 20 seed. So you've got a real good shot here to win a couple of matches, get in, and beyond that, we can project a little bit ahead of time. And if you get to the final there, you likely are going to see Ursuline there in the final at that point. I'm wondering what you thought, given your season, of your seeding, if you thought it was appropriate, maybe a little too low, and also the matchup possibilities that could allow you to get to a final and see Ursuline.
The seeding process is kind of a difficult one. And, if the coaches do their homework, some of the matches that we've played maybe haven't been some of the stronger teams. So coaches do take that into account. So when you're looking at the strengths of the schedule, so I think it was probably a fair seed where they were. Obviously, they've had some really good wins in the GMC. They beat some teams they've never beat before. So a lot of confidence going into the tournament. So I think, knowing who you are, and to me, I always said it's just a number. We just still got to go out and play. So I think their draw was really favorable. I got a really great chance of, picking up a couple wins, which they haven't done in years. So, obviously that senior leadership that they have, and even some of their young depth that they have, I think is going to be valuable to them going forward this year.
I look at the schedule and see right now, as I said, we're 12-5 on the year, and 4 of those 5 losses are in 5 sets. So you look at the way things shake out. If a bounce here, a deflection there goes the other way, you're 16-1 on the season. Do you feel like this is a team right now that can potentially be, considering where they were given and seated, I should say, flying under the radar, and a team that can come up and catch an Ursuline by surprise should you get to that final round there before you advance on?
Absolutely. I mean, when you've got the McNally twins, you've got Kate White, you've got Grace Gaynor, you've got all these girls that have had a bunch of experience, that have been there, who've played in these matches before. Obviously this match against Mason is going to be a little personal for them, against their former coach. So they're going to be really flying high against Mason, and they've got some some winnable matches this week. They could potentially get up to 13, 14, 15 wins. So I think that motivation to kind of get rolling on that high this week head into the tournament, I think would be paramount for them to have a successful run. And I always love being the underdog and knocks people off if people don't expect it, and just come out and play your game.
As we always like to talk about here on the fall season, we like to end things talking about your football program, and they've continuing to take care of business in the league. Just have that one blemish a couple of weeks ago, a 7-6 loss to Lakota East, which is that's about as gut wrenching as you can get to play a game like that, and where both teams' defenses play so well, and you wind up losing by a point, but do bounce back nicely to take care of business against Hamilton, win that one 27-6. So we're 5-1 in the league right now, 5-3 overall. And boy, the schedule makers didn't really do you guys a lot of favors as far as the final 2 weeks of the regular season, because you're going to host Lakota West this coming Friday, and then you're going to go to Princeton on the 22nd. And you look at the way things shake out, they're combined 13-2 on the campaign. So I'm wondering, given that schedule, how important it was for your team to bounce back after the Lakota East loss and take care of a Hamilton team the way they did, and a Hamilton team that's been struggling, and a team that you should take care of.
I've been around after that Lakota East game, and the coaching staff was very positive, and and this year's kind of a unique year. Everybody kind of makes the playoffs, and so it's about building to that playoff point. Obviously the goal was to win a GMC championship. We still have an opportunity to do that. We've got chances to knock off some teams that, are right there in the hunt, but, it's about building towards that playoff run. And I'm been a true believer, and people forget about a regular season. You make a deep run in the playoffs. So it's about building to that. It's about keeping the kids positive and continue to execute. We're getting some kids back healthy. And so it's about a lot of times it's more about who's the most healthy at the end that really gets to make that run in the postseason.
Given how tough the finish to the season is here, the way we saw the latest computer rankings had your team seated 8th in the region at this point. That would put you like in a first round matchup, possibly with Mason, maybe Fairfield, and then likely you would see St. X in round 2. So not the easiest route down there. So I'm wondering, from that point, to try to help out that seeding, how important it is for these last 2 weeks to at least not go 0-2, to at least split, if not go 2-0, to further help your chances at a better draw in the playoffs.
Absolutely. The later you have to play St. X, probably the better this year. So obviously, these next couple of weeks are really important to, get things right, do things, the way that you want to do them. Get, obviously a 2-0 last 2 weeks would be excellent. But the coaching staff is all about building towards, keeping them positive, keeping them on the right path, doing the things the right way in order to build towards, bumping that seed up maybe to a 7 or a 6, up to a 5, so it all just kind of, the other thing is it's all in the kids' hands. It's all, the kids kind of control their destiny, what they want to do, how they want to execute. So, kind of that message to them is, hey, you take care of business, you're going to put yourself up. You can put yourself in a better position to make a deeper run in the tournament.
When we look at the computer rankings as they stand when we're recording this, you're seated 8th, Princeton is 6th, Lakota West is 4. So as you said, everything's in front of you for your team to potentially move up there. Let's start off with the Lakota West matchup here. Obviously, everybody knows, how strong Lakota West is, and a team that believes it can make a deep run. Their only loss came to St. X in the opener, and they've been playing strong ever since. They actually had a week off this past week because the game against Middletown got canceled. So an extra week of rest for them. How do you see that matchup playing out, and how important will it be, especially I think early on, for your team to establish the ground game and try and use clock and keep their offense off the field?
Absolutely. That's what we're built around, is keeping the ball, wearing them down, grinding. Obviously the foe knows what we do, and we know a lot of what they do. So it's about who's going to execute better. I mean, that's truly what it comes down to. And, obviously keeping the ball longer than they, keeping them off the field gives us a better opportunity to score, and doesn't allow them to score, and lets our defense stay fresh. Obviously that's one of our strong suits, is our defense has been for a very long time. So the more fresh we can keep them, the better off we'll be in that game.
And lastly, with the Princeton matchup, obviously a new coaching staff there. Andre Parker moving over from Winton Woods. They're scoring points in droves, just like Lakota West is, doing it with a sophomore at quarterback who's been throwing and running the ball. Does that similar game plan kind of go into that one as well? Establish the ground game, burn that clock up so that you don't have a dynamic quarterback on the other side on the field and running all over the place?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I talk to Coach Cudd every day at lunchtime, and we kind of talk about what he's going to do and things like that. So he's obviously always about making sure that we establish what we want to do, and make sure we're running the ball well and keeping our defense fresh. You know, obviously some things can translate from game to game, but obviously you make your adjustments based upon film and what he sees. But yeah, there's probably be a lot of very similar types of schemes and things like that. But you know, I think it's more about what can we establish ourselves? Can we run the ball well with MJ? And, you know, don't turn the ball over is another big one. And you know, don't shoot ourselves in the foot and play good defense.
It's an exciting time in the fall season for sure. As we've talked here today, postseason routes are pretty much been established almost for everyone. Football still yet to be determined, but they have a couple of monster regular season games, as we've just discussed here, coming up in the next 2 weeks. Mike, certainly appreciate the time here today, and looking forward to see how things play out in the next couple of weeks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That is Colerain Assistant Athletic Director Mike Wiesman joining us here on the Inside Colerain Cardinals Athletics podcast here on wearecolerain.com and ESP Media, powered by Sidearm Sports.